Welcome to C21 Drive Time. Our team of realtors will be sharing industry news and insights, the occasional interview with interesting people, and some of the most unreal real estate stories you have ever heard. And here's our host.
Welcome to the C21 Drive Time podcast. I am your host today, Chris Hassel, joined by co-host Aaron Raw Dog Rollick.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So thank you for tuning in today, wherever you're tuning in from, or whether you're driving down the road, sitting in your car, listening on your headphones, or maybe going out for a jog. I think we'd be inspirational to go jogging for someone, to listen in. And
we keep it upbeat. We'd probably keep the pace going good.
I would think so. It'd be, marathon type stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about decks. I don't know why, that just came to my mind. So we're going to talk about decks, setbacks, some of the stuff the day-to-day stuff that we run into as real estate agents. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting topic because, in your buyer side of the world, the home inspectors kind of have a bit of a field day with decks, not because they want to, because they typically have to. Tell us a bit about your experience there.
Decks are a wonderful thing for families. They are, for the most part, stable in town. We don't really have any that are collapsing, but it is an ever-changing building code, how they are built, how they are designed, whether they were done by a professional builder or by the homeowner as a DIY project, those types of things. But I would truly say the majority of decks have an issue under home inspection. Now, are they an issue where it involves safety? Very rarely. They're just sometimes to do with building codes, things that, of course, the home inspectors know, and then it comes on us to mitigate and have that conversation with the client, whether it involves repairs, another further inspection, permitting, those types of things. I mean, nothing insurmountable, but always an interesting conversation, especially when it comes to the more expansive ones. I mean, a simple deck, 12 by 12, generally not a big deal. Those are pretty straightforward. But when you get into really large decks, it can be a little daunting for a person coming in and really, I have to say, I appreciate the fact our local home inspectors understand the apprehension often in buyers. The home inspection can be scary. Okay, what's going to be wrong with it? You kind of come in with that, my glass is half empty already. And they do a really good job of discussing the issues, if there are any, with the clients, and kind of explaining to them, this is not a huge deal, but it's there. It's something you need to be aware of. Maybe you don't have to deal with it today, but down the road, it may be of issue. And then, of course, we step in and talk to them about, okay, well, this, if you don't do anything, it's going to be a repeat when you go to sell the house. But again, there's lots of nuances, and it's, again, easily discussed and dealt with.
Absolutely. Yeah, because especially when you said earlier, contractor versus home builder, or, DIY, whatever you want to call it. Because everyone says, oh, yeah, I know how to build a deck, or my Uncle Tom does, but when they get down to the nuts and bolts of it, I bought my house last November, and same thing, the inspector looked at it and said, okay, here's some things that it's not right with, and some things that it's not up to code. And so in the business, I said, yeah, I can fix those over time. But for some, they see that as a red alarm, or a red flag, and say, okay, this needs to be fixed now.
Yeah.
Now, we were moving in November. It wasn't the time to be tearing the deck apart. So, especially in this wonderful province/country we live, it gets so cold parts of the year. Mm-hmm. So sometimes there's the seasons to be dealt with, and sometimes not.
Yeah, and then you come across too. I mean, for a few years locally, it was it almost became a trend of requesting deck permits, which you can get. Some homeowners do have. But many just do not. And I think that's where the home inspection plays a big part in it, where to ensure that deck was done correctly and done safely. And for me, with buyers, that's the biggest concern. I say to them, there may be an issue with this, and something that's not insurmountable, but our largest concern always has to be safety.
Yep.
Is if you put 10 people on the deck, is it going to collapse? And those are, questions you can discuss ahead of time, be prepared for, and ask the home inspector that. And that often puts people at ease. Is, maybe the deck is on a piling that it shouldn't be on, or on a setback that it shouldn't be according to code. We can get it changed, but is it going to be a safety issue in the interim? More than likely, it's not going to be, but if it is, we'll remedy it right away.
Yeah, because handrails are usually on, stuff like that, so people aren't falling off of it. But yeah, is it structurally sound? And yeah, for sure, I agree with you there. And the big one in my last house, I'll use an example. People question me why I never built an upper deck on my walkout. And the concern was there because I see a lot of them heave.
Right.
So it was where, okay, do I want to go down this road or do I just leave it for the next person? And the next person I've driven by the day, they'd added the upper deck and that's what they wanted. Cool. Me being in the business and I saw lots of them, hydraulic because of the weather that we have, they can be issued. I don't know if you've ever ran across that or not.
Oh, yes. Yeah. No, absolutely. The ones that are, the walkouts up really high, kind of really, they're second story by the time they're out there. They definitely move and shift. And I always caution the buyers, this is something that we definitely need to have the home inspector look into. And the home inspectors know that. They tend to spend a little more time on those because they are that safety concern to make sure. And just little things. If that deck's heaved and, maybe it takes on water and that water runs back towards the house, well, then that creates a secondary issue. So, there's always discussion points. And again, I mentioned it in a previous episode that we were in, is there's no silly questions. And I always tell clients, like, whether it's myself, the home inspector, if it pops into your head, put it out there because let's get it dealt with and put everyone at ease.
And lots of times the deck may be brought up in the home inspection, and we had we're very blessed to have a lot of repeat and return clients. And sometimes it's a bit funny because we go back that many years later and the deck hasn't changed at all. So it was a big issue on the inspection. Oh, we got to do something. And, maybe they say, okay, we'll take it and we'll deal with it in our own time. 5 years down the road, the kids are grown up. Life is busy. We'll go back, and it'll be the exactly same way as when they bought it, and same as if you said, hey, I'm going to buy this house and build a garage. And we go back 5 years later and the garage still isn't there. And you're like, okay.
That's to me, that's the handrail issue. We see that quite often is, it's essentially, I call it 2.5, but really 3 steps requires a handrail. And a lot of decks are like that, especially on the, like a bi-level house. A lot of time that deck's up there and it's just sometimes 2 steps, sometimes 3, but by code, there should be a handrail there. And the people always put one in, and we go back a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 later to sell the house for them, and you kind of snicker because you recall that handrail conversation. But it's like, is it? And for some people, like for me in my situation, you're of the same. Is we don't need I don't think I need a handrail on 3 steps down to the grass. My kids are 21 and 18. Well,
they might, at that age, they have too many wobbly pops.
Exactly, might be, but they'll survive the fall.
They'll survive the fall,
Where it might be different, where I've had a lot of clients who are coming in, they got a 4 and a 2-year-old. Well, we better have a railing and a handrail conversation because that's a bit more of a safety issue, and I understand that's why it's in the code.
And if I actually ask the audience that's listening right now, saying, do you know if your deck has a permit on it? I bet you there'd be some people they went, I don't know, or no, I didn't. I built it myself. And so let's talk about that for 1 sec, is to say if you built one, let's say in the last 4, 5, 10 years, you can still go get a permit for it, can you not?
Yes, you can. You can apply to City of Lloydminster, hit up their website. They'll have the information on there about how you apply for that permit. It'll cost you a few bucks. We were discussing off air. Couldn't remember the exact cost of it, but it walks you step by step through how to get that deck permitted. They'll come and have a look at it and make sure it meets specifications, and then you keep that. If you get that deck permit, if you have that deck permit, that should stay in your house files along with, a lot of people have their house plans, they have their RPR, which we've discussed in the past, maybe a letter of compliance. Put that deck permit in there. Every little bit of information you have about your home when you go to sell it is invaluable.
Yep. And then to kind of to wrap this, I mean, sometimes when we go see clients and they'll ask us saying, well, what should we be doing to get the house prepped for sale? We'll give them some guidance on that. But let's say that they were a one owner or somewhere where they've been in the house a considerable amount of time, sometimes we'll recommend to get that inspection done as a pre-sale inspection. Yep. So if there is issues on the deck, they can get them rectified. So then when the buyers walk in, it's just one more thing off the checkbox. Because when it's in that home inspection for the buyer, they either want it remedied or they're maybe looking for compensation.
Exactly.
So if you take care of that ahead of time, just one more thing. Costs you a few bucks, but it's a bit of warranting, so to speak.
Absolutely. It makes life a lot easier the more bases we can cover ahead of time.
And speaking of deck, your deck on your house is ginormous. And so you speak of it with experience.
Yeah, I mean, ours is a kind of a 2-tiered thing, and it's all over the map. And but that said, I don't know if I have a deck permit. I don't recall from when we bought, and I'm probably, if I went to sell my house, I'd be the majority of sellers. When you come to list my house and say, do you have a deck permit? I will say, I don't know, but I do have a file downstairs, and I'll probably comb through it later today out of morbid curiosity to see if I have one.
Perfect. Well, we've made you aware, if nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely. Educational.
The podcast is all about awareness and
Yep.
all about making life better. So
That's right.
let's make sure your deck is up to snuff, as well as all our listeners right now.
Excellent.
Cool.
Thanks for tuning in to the C21 Drive Time podcast. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join us weekly as we discuss all things real estate.